From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo! Welcome back, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. Dr. Jason here, trying to adjust my camera so I don't get yelled at by the people that edit my videos. So give me a second. All right, there we go. What's today? Today's Wednesday. Just got done with a pretty intense deadlift workout, and it was awesome. I felt really, really strong. I don't normally like doing more than 5 reps per set when it comes to deadlift, but today I was in that 7 to 8 range. I felt really, really good. But you don't tune into this podcast to hear about my Wednesday deadlift routines. I love kind of getting on and just rambling about things that are relevant to a lot of the one-on-one coaching conversations I have and what's part of the discussion that's going on in our group coaching platform. And more recently, it's been the use of what we'll call a scorecard. So I was first introduced to a concept of the scorecard from Gino Wickman in his book, Traction, which is part of the EOS series. Strongly recommend it if you feel like you don't have a grasp on the basics of running a business. It's, in my opinion, right up there with E-Myth, Good to Great, some of the really core philosophies on how best to run a business. All the information's out there. We actually talked about this a few weeks ago, right? So knowledge is not power, but implementation of said knowledge is power. But you need to access that knowledge, right? So that knowledge, in regards to scorecards, I was first introduced to by Gino Wickman in his book, Traction. And what they basically unpacked there was business owners should have a scorecard, which is a set of metrics, KPIs, which stands for key performance indicators, whatever you want to call it, anywhere from 3 to 10 metrics that are really important to evaluating the success of the business. And these metrics should be updated weekly, not monthly, not quarterly, but weekly. And you should be in a position as the owner where you can look at these metrics on a weekly basis and make key decisions on strategy that's going to ultimately affect where you want to go, ultimately move closer and closer towards your vision. So I think everyone agrees with that. The issues that we've been running into is what to measure and what to do when the metrics are not at goal. So as far as what to measure, I believe in the concept of lag and lead measures. Now, a lag measure is a metric or KPI that's happened in the past. You can't control it, so to speak. So a typical lag measure would be adjusted production from the previous week, collections from the previous week, new patients seen the previous week, those types of things, right? And I do think those are important metrics. In fact, all of our scorecards have those 3 lag measures: adjusted production, collections or collection percentage. They're basically one and the same if you have your adjusted production number, and new patients. Those are the 3 things that everybody talks about. This reference doesn't make as much sense nowadays, but 20 years ago when I first got into dentistry, before a lot of social media, before a lot of online learning, a lot of dentists would go to their local dental society for this hour and a half in-person class, and then you'd all be at the bar afterwards, and those were the 3 things everyone talked about as they sipped on their bourbon. What's your production? What's your collections? What's your new patients? That's all everyone ever talked about, right? So yeah, they're important metrics. But the other 3, 4, 5, 6 metrics that I think are very, very important to measure on a scorecard are what I would call, and what Gino Wickman calls, lead measures, or metrics that are driving behavior, metrics that we have control over. So yes, in theory, we have control over adjusted production, but the choices that we make in a moment-to-moment basis don't necessarily have control over adjusted production. Yes, we have control over new patients, but that's a downstream effect. New patients are a downstream effect of a number of things that we can do. And what I just did there, a number of things that we can do, that's a lead measure. That's a behavior that we can exhibit. So let me give you an example. If new patients are important to us, and they should be important to us, and our goal for new patients is, let's say, 10 a week, just as an aside, in my opinion, for a typical bread and butter PPO driven practice, 40 new patients per full-time doctor is a really good goal, is a really good place to start. So if you're a single doctor office and you have a pretty normal skill set, some endo, basic crown and bridge, some restorative, you take out a few teeth here and there, maybe an implant every now and then. You're, again, bread and butter dentist, and nothing wrong with that. I'm a bread and butter dentist, right? Then, in my opinion, you need about 40 new patients per month to keep and stay busy. Same thing with your associates, right? If you have an associate-driven practice, then I think the goal should be 35 to 40 new patients a month. Okay, so if the goal is 40 new patients a month, then on a weekly basis, the goal is roughly 10. So if you have a scorecard that is measuring new patients, and you see on this weekly scorecard that you're consistently below 10 new patients, then what do you need to do? Well, there's a lot of things that you could consider doing. One would be to increase marketing. But how do you know that increased marketing is going to fix the problem? The reality is you don't. So what are some other lead metrics that you could track to help the new patient number? Well, it's been my experience that the first one is, are you answering the phone? So call answer rate is a metric that I would be measuring if I was in a situation where my new patient numbers were down, again, lag measure, and I was trying to decide what behavior am I trying to drive, what habits am I trying to develop of my team in an attempt to get new patients up, because answering the phone is directly related to new patient numbers. Now, I'm not suggesting that every time you answer the phone it's a new patient that wants to schedule, but I can assure you that the less you answer the phone, the more prospective new patients you're missing out on. So that would be the first thing I would consider. I would have those 3 main lag measures on my scorecard. And a scorecard is just basically a spreadsheet, right? And then the first thing I would be measuring below that would be call answer rate. And a great call answer rate is in between 90 and 95%. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Most dentists think that their front desk is answering the phone at a 90 or 95% rate. The reality is, don't shoot the messenger, that if you actually start to track this, you're probably answering closer to 50 to 60% of your phone calls. And that's not good. So again, when you look at a low new patient number, lag measure, and you think to yourself, I really need to ramp up my new patient flow, the default is to just throw money at it through marketing, either internal or external. And that may or may not be the solution. All I'm suggesting to you is it makes absolutely no sense to throw more marketing dollars at the problem if you're not answering leads that are generated through that marketing, if you're not answering the phone when those leads call. So you need to get your house in order before you start throwing money at marketing. So the number one lead measure that I would consider is call answer rate. Try to shoot for 90%. The second metric I would be considering is lead conversion rate. Now, what is lead conversion rate? It means, yes, Sally at the front desk is answering the phone, and it's a prospective new patient, Are we converting that prospective new patient into a scheduled new patient appointment? And you should be able to measure that either on your Honest system or through auditing recorded phone calls, or through some of the new AI software that's out there through Mango and Vonage and things like that. But again, if your new patient numbers are down, lag measure, I'm going to throw more money at the situation because that's the default what dentists do. I'm going to throw more money at marketing. And in regards to that, I will coach up my team to answer the phone. Great. So now we've thrown more marketing at it, which is going to generate more leads. We're answering the phone at 90%. So those new patient leads will have someone on the other end when they call. But if we're not dialed in from a scripting and training perspective to convert those new patient leads to scheduled appointments, then again, it's a waste of your marketing dollars. So typically, and patients don't know what to ask when they call a dental office. Just like sometimes we don't know what to ask when we call the mechanic, the chiropractor, a medical doctor. So by default, not always, but by default, a majority of patients will say, do you take my insurance? Hey, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rochester. Do you take my insurance? That may or may not be the number one thing that's most important to them. That's not the point. The point is they don't know what else to ask. So if this prospective new patient lead who you paid for through increased marketing and who you're talking to because you've trained up your front desk to answer the phone at a 90% rate, if the number one question that they ask is, do you take my insurance? And you have someone answering the phone that's not trained to answer that question and they simply say, no, we don't participate with that insurance, the patient's going to say, okay, thank you, and hang up. Or the person answering the phone is going to be like, anything else I can help you with? No, hang up. So you have to have them trained up to convert that new patient lead and make sure that they understand the verbiage, they have the phone skills to navigate those conversations. So let's just rewind the tape a little bit here. We've discovered that we have a new patient problem, and we've seen that through looking at our scorecard on a weekly basis and seeing a lower than goal number of new patients. The goal for us in this fictitious example is going to be 10, but we're routinely running at 6 or 7 or 8. So we're an astute business owner. So instead of just defaulting to throwing more money at internal or external marketing, we've decided to expand our scorecard and start to measure some lead metrics that will drive behavior in an attempt to increase new patient numbers. And the lead measures that we've talked about so far are call answer rate and new patient lead conversion. There's another metric that, in my opinion, is very, very important to be associated with new patient number, and that is the next available appointment in your schedule. So I'm not going to get in a clinical philosophical conversation about where you should put new patients. A lot of practices put them in hygiene. A lot of practices put them on the doctor's side. That's not really the point. The point is, whatever your philosophy is, when is the next available appointment that you can get that particular prospective new patient in? So let's use hygiene for an example, because it's just been my coaching experience that most offices will schedule new patients through hygiene, assuming they don't have an emergency of some sort. So you've answered the phone. So you got a prospective new patient that searches for your office on Google, or a neighbor refers them, or what have you. So they call your office. Boom, you've taken care of the first issue. You've answered the phone. Boom, you've taken care of the second issue in the sense that Sally at the front desk is trained up well enough to navigate all of the conversation in an attempt, and she has successfully converted the patient to someone that wants to schedule an appointment. So then you go to schedule an appointment and come to the realization that you're scheduling 2, 3, 4 months out for a new patient appointment in hygiene. I can all but assure you that that is going to lead to the patient either scheduling that appointment and then calling the next dentist that's on their radar, or not scheduling an appointment at all. So all of that to say, another thing that you could consider measuring on your scorecard is next available hygiene appointment or for a new patient. So ideally, you'd like to keep it within 10 days. So if you have your next available new patient hygiene appointment further out than 10 days, then that's telling you that you need to do something internally, all in an effort to solidify a new patient lead, scheduling an appointment. Now, what should you do? Well, you could hire another hygienist or add hygiene days. Again, I would need to know a little bit more about your situation to give you the advice that's really going to land. But one situation would be to increase hygiene days, right? That's an obvious solution. Another solution would be to internally have conversations about bringing new patients in a different way. Like I said, some practices will bring them in on the doctor side for, say, a 60-minute full mouth evaluation comprehensive exam. And now we can move them over to the hygiene side in the subsequent weeks for a 60-minute prophy. Another solution, one that we do a lot in our offices when we're at capacity for hygiene, at least from a new patient perspective, is we'll schedule them with a doctor for 60 minutes, and then right after that, we'll schedule them with a hygienist for 60 minutes. And that works most of the time unless the patient's perio. So lots of different solutions, and it's hard to give advice as to what the solution should be without knowing your particular situation. But again, these are things that you should be thinking about before you go to the default of just throwing money at the problem through increasing your external or internal marketing efforts. So that's just one example. Let's talk about another example. Let's say that you just got back from a weekend course on Invisalign and you are fired up and your team is fired up and your goal is to start to do more Invisalign, and you understand that your limitations in terms of providing the treatment. So you're going to do class 1 crowded cases, maybe some space cases, but for a majority is going to be class 1 crowding. So should you be tracking on your scorecard Invisalign cases started? No, you shouldn't, because that's out of your control. What you can control is Invisalign cases presented. So assuming that you want to do, let's say, a case a week, right? Let's say you want to start off with 4 to 5 cases a month. You need to be presenting those cases on a regular basis. You can't present 0 cases and expect to do 1 to 2 a week. So one of the metrics that I would consider on a scorecard, again, this is a lead metric, this is a metric in your control, is the number of Invisalign cases that you present. Let's say your goal is to present 5 cases per week, and you know that if you present 5 cases per week, then 1 to 2 of those 5 cases will say yes. When you have a metric like this and you make the office aware of it, then everyone's looking for those 4 or 5 cases per week. If at a team meeting you're reviewing the scorecard and you see under the headline of cases, Invisalign cases presented, you see 0, 1, 1, 0, then that's an awesome opportunity to have a conversation with your team. Hey guys, we talked about how it would be so awesome to bring Invisalign to our practice. We also discussed that on a weekly basis, we want to average about 5 Invisalign presentations per week. But as you can see from the scorecard data, we're averaging about 0 to 1 per week. What's that about? And you ask that question from a position of curiosity and love and vulnerability, and you're really trying to get to the root cause of what's going on. It could be any number of situations. It could be you don't have an iTero scanner and it's just too difficult to communicate the value of Invisalign when you don't have an iTero scanner. It could be that your clinical team isn't trained up to take great photographs. It could be that your clinical team doesn't understand the benefits of Invisalign when the patient's not asking for it. So, for example, as everyone knows, When your teeth are straight and your bite is balanced, there's less wear, there's less gingivitis and less nooks and crannies to have gingival inflammation and then possible perio. There's less broken teeth. There's a number of advantages that you learned at the course, but unless you over communicate that to your team and your team doesn't over communicate it to your patients where they see the opportunity for someone to benefit from Invisalign, then you'll never get anywhere. But it starts with identifying why you're struggling, and that identification starts on a scorecard. So again, a lead measure in this particular fictitious example would be Invisalign cases presented. So again, there's so many different lead measures that you can track on a weekly basis that are going to help you get to where you want to go, help you drive the behavior that you want. And I've just talked about two of them here: answering the phone, converting new patients, part of the new patient number, and then Invisalign cases presented. You could even break that down further to iTero scans taken. So all of those behaviors lead to something. They lead to Invisalign cases accepted. Another great one, I get this all the time on coaching calls, is an underproducing associate. How do I get my associate to produce more? Right? So obviously it starts with a couple different things. They need to have the skill set, and they need to have the ability to communicate to get the patient to say yes. Okay, those are non-negotiables. Okay, you're not going to be able to produce crazy numbers as an associate if you can only do fillings, right? You can't take out teeth, can't put an implant in. You don't feel comfortable doing quadrants of crown or ridge, all that stuff. So you need to have the skill set, and you need to be able to have enough emotional intelligence and self-awareness to communicate with patients, right? An empathetic listener, maintaining eye contact, not being condescending, all of those things that we've talked about ad nausea in other recordings. But one of the things that a lot of associates and senior doctors don't really think about is, are they presenting enough treatment? So if the associate's goal is, let's say, $4,000 a day in adjusted production, a super reasonable goal for an associate, 2 years out of school. And again, let's assume their case acceptance is probably in the low 30s. That's very common as younger associates are trying to figure out their communication style and how to listen and stuff like that. So if the goal is $4,000 a day and they're getting a third of their cases to say yes, then they need to treatment plan $12,000 a day. Now that sounds like a big number, and it is, but simple math tells you that if you're not presenting $12,000 on average, $12,000 a day in dentistry, if your case acceptance is around 30, you're not going to reach a goal of $4,000 a day. So a great lead measure to track, again, if your quote unquote problem is an underproducing associate, is on a weekly basis, how much dentistry is my associate producing? Again, let's just reverse engineer it. You're trying to get your associate to do $4,000 a day. Let's say they work 4 days a week. That's $16,000 a week. You need them to present 3 times that amount in order to predictably get to $4,000 a day or $16,000 a week. So what's 16,000 times 3? I'm gonna do some math in my head here. 40 and then another 18, that's 58,000, right? I think that's right. 16 times 3, yeah. So on a scorecard, I would say, Associate Smith, dollars treatment planned, the goal being, let's call it 60 grand. And then I'm tracking on a weekly basis how much this doctor is presenting. If the doctor's presenting 20, 25, 22, this is an issue, right? This is telling me that they need to change their behavior. You need to mentor them to figure out a way to treatment plan more dollars. Now you can even peel back the onion a little bit more and figure out, well, why is your treatment planning amount so low? Again, it's either limited skill set. It could be that's a them issue, right? And you'll need to coach them up on that. It could be they're not getting enough at-bats. It's hard to present $60,000 a week in treatment if they're only doing 3 exams a day or something along those lines. So it just scorecards give you data that you can then ultimately peel back the onion and just ask why. Well, why? Well, why? Well, why? What is the root cause of this number being where it's at? And with that information, you can make a lot of really, really great decisions. I'm just going to close this recording by saying, don't make decisions based on your gut. Don't make decisions based on how you feel the numbers are. Too many coaching calls where, especially a senior doctor will say, I think case acceptance is good. I think my associate closes cases. I think they're presenting enough treatment. I think we're doing iTero scans and hygiene. Like, I hate that. And I don't hate many things. I'm constantly telling my kids that we don't hate, and I don't really hate it. But it's leading with ambiguity. It's owning a business based in subjectivity. Like, know the numbers, not every number, but know the 5 to 10 numbers that really, really, really move the needle. And once you track these numbers on a weekly basis, then you start to have some clarity with, oh, I got to make some changes here, here, and here. I have to drive this behavior here, here, and here. I have to change these habits here, here, and here. And I can assure you that if you do that and you get buy-in in the entire team to do that, you're going to start to see your 3 lag measures, production, collections, and new patients, exponentially go up. So I hope that information was helpful for you guys. Again, just something that's been on my heart as it's been a topic of conversation in my one-on-one coaching calls and our group coaching as well. So any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out. All my contact information is on the website, dentallighthouse.com. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.